Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. Barbarians! You know them, you love them, you fulfill your testosterone-filled rage fantasies with them. Indeed, the Barbarian is certainly a class to be admired, what with them being the noble savages that they are. In today's society, where everything is offensive and no one knows how to chop wood or wrestle bears anymore, we should look inward and find the barbarian that's inside ourselves. If you all don't mind, I believe my own barbarian has something to say. Everyone, drive to your local gym and deadlift the biggest barbell you can find. Stuff your face with raw meat. And most importantly of all, whether you are young or old, be sure to take time and grab a giant f***-off axe and decapitate your enemies before drinking liquor from their skulls!
Den of the Drake does not condone underage drinking or murder. Ask your doctor if the path of the barbarian is right for you. Warning, side effects may include bloodthirst, random bouts of loud yelling, desire to yank out spinal cords with your bare hands, and a desire to wear nothing but a loincloth.
Be the person your barbarian wants you to be! Oh god, I think I need to go to the hospital. Oh, my throat was not designed to do voices like that for a long time. Fuck. Anyway, as I was saying before I let my rage get the better of me, today's story involves a barbarian who is loved by his magic-hating DM. Maybe a bit too much. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG horror stories. Enjoy. This story is titled The Anti-Magic DM and the Favored Barbarian. This is gonna be a long story of one of my first D&D campaigns, and how it all ended in disaster. I was a part of a heavily homebrewed game of D&D, and our DM was very experienced. When creating my character, I had a question about Quickened Spell, and asked if it meant I could cast 2 spells. I was a fairly new player. The DM read it and said he would allow me to cast 2 spells. Neat. So the campaign is on its way, and one thing our party notices is that every battle is a life or death battle. Like fighting an 80-man zombie horde with archers and wizard zombies when we're leveled 2 to 3. Almost all fights are like this. We would average 2 to 3 downed teammates each fight, and almost everyone was on low health. We always fought against enemies way above our level, and it wasn't because we took the long route. We were following the route the DM intended. It didn't help that the DM had consistent high rolls either. The DM would also spend a lot of time on his NPCs, and he would often make them more central to the story than us. They often had to save us from harm, and in big epic battles, we were just kind of there on the sidelines, fighting a couple of enemies way above our level. Of course, all of his NPCs were godly beings that were untouchable for us, and they would also break character if it suited him. For instance, there was a flirty NPC. My character decided to flirt back and rolled a nat 20. Our group goes wild, thinking that I somehow did the ultimate Chad move. Nope. Now the NPC hates my character for some reason, and often almost tries to kill him. Now to the meat and potatoes of it all, and the reason I dub him the Anti-Magic DM. At first, he allowed me to cast double spells, like I said. He didn't like it anymore, because it did too much damage compared to the rest of us, he said. This, however, wasn't true. Our barbarian often did way more damage than me, and that was before he got a mythical weapon. So from then onwards, I wasn't allowed to cast double spells. Fine, I think it's his rules, I guess. But he also made me miss many of my damaging spells from then on out. For instance, I cast Scorching Ray and all of my rays hit the enemy, and they aren't immune or resistant to fire. but they don't take damage cause I hit their tail, and it just falls off without them taking damage. This happened more times than I would like to admit. Besides just hard nerfing my damage, he never allowed me, as the caster, to get any magical items. If we went to shops, I wasn't allowed to buy from the magical item section, or they for some reason never had any magic wands or anything like it. Meanwhile, they had +4 axes and swords with magical effects. This was where one of the most outrageous things happened. Our DM gave our barbarian a manor that was so advanced it's insane. He somehow got the house of a legendary hero with a magical forge and a giant component garden, private automatons that would fight and care for him, all of that and way more. We were like level 6. On top of all of this, he gave our barbarian a +5 greatsword with a crit range from 15 to 20. And when activated, he could get advantage on his attack throws. The best part is he wasn't proficient with greatswords, but axes. But with the power of the magical forge, it became a +7 great axe, and kept all of its abilities. So our DM gave mythical weaponry to the non-casters, and didn't really allow the casters to find any gear that would actually help them. When we finally did find a wand, he gave it to the barbarian, who refused to give it away. The wand had 10 charges, and could copy a spell it had seen in the week past, once. If someone cast Fireball in front of our barbarian, with 8 intelligence, 10 wisdom, with no magical affinity whatsoever, the barbarian could then cast the same spell without effort or any negative modifiers because the wand would cast it, not him. He also got a delayed Fire Blast necklace in case he didn't feel strong enough yet. One time, the barbarian cast a spell that was so dangerous, only one other person in the world could cast it, and this person refused to let anyone else cast these kinds of spells. Except our barbarian. He was the exception. The favoritism was off the charts. So there's nothing wrong with having favorites. Favorite ice cream flavor, favorite color, favorite animal, but a DM should really try to avoid picking favorites at the D&D table. Hell, I would choose picking my favorite child over picking my favorite D&D player. At least with a kid, there's a chance the little shit'll grow up and forget about it, but that's not the case with a D&D party. No. Players have brains like steel traps when it comes to stuff like this. That's because it really doesn't feel good when you spend time making a character, only for that character to become a side piece in a story that was supposed to be shared with your friends. And if you think being sidelined is bad, try being the DM's favorite. I can imagine that's 1,000,000 times worse. Like, if you have any self-awareness, I can only imagine you must be dying inside. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant for your birthday, and then all of the waitstaff comes up to your table with like a candle sticking out of like a scoop of ice cream, and they start singing happy birthday to you, and on the entire restaurant staring at you, and you're just sitting there confused and terrified. Yeah, imagine that personal hell, but it's a year-long campaign. So, yeah, I know it's super obvious, but to any of you DMs listening out there, you probably shouldn't pick a favorite, and if you have to pick a favorite, then don't let anyone in your party know which one of them is your favorite. All of us also had a profession. I was an alchemist, and our barbarian was a brewer. Since my magic was being halted, I figured that I could create some damaging potions, since I could make potions explode. However, the DM didn't allow my character to remember how to make any potions. Basically, a highly experienced alchemist wasn't allowed to remember their potions or how to make them. I also had a master in alchemy, who created cool potions and whom I had been in tutelage with for a long time. He often sold me potions, but when he had created a potion of explosions and fiend fire, he did not allow me to buy them. He also didn't let me even learn the recipe and told me I wouldn't be able to recreate them even on a nat 20. Meanwhile, our barbarian had created a brew that somehow allowed him to become a demon butterfly god. It could give him power of flight, invisibility, and basically anything you can imagine. This happened because he had a legion of small demon butterflies following his desires whenever he drank his brew. He could also perfectly remember how to make it. So, being beyond all options on how to improve my character and also being the only character that almost constantly gets mugged or kidnapped, I started losing hope. And I just genuinely did not like this campaign. That was until my friend, who had a character with an intelligence of 26, came up with a plan. Note, he got that intelligence thanks to something the DM did. His character was fascinated by explosions. They would ask me to help create an explosion device that basically was kind of like a bomb/mini nuke. Now, a 26 intelligence character plus a 16 intelligence character that knows a lot about explosions could probably craft something along the lines of what we were thinking. But it turns out they can't. We rolled a 19 on creating something and almost died. Turns out a 26 intelligence character isn't smarter, but just thinks faster. And that my 16 intelligence character with knowledge of explosions somehow didn't figure out that we could cause a huge dust explosion. It was at this point both my friend and I were done. We had talked with the DM often to try and make him see that he was very unfavorable to magic characters. My friend was a cleric. And constantly gave things to the martial characters, and most of all, the barbarian. But he responded with, "The DM is always right. If you don't like it, just leave." After taking that into consideration for a while, we took him up on his offer, and left. The martial characters didn't understand, because they kept saying, "We're having fun." Which, I mean, of course you are. You're basically gods at level 7. You have mythical weapons and abilities that make you nigh immortal. That was my first big D&D campaign. And it's safe to say that I'm still turned off by it, and afraid of what DMs will do. If you want more examples of things he did, or want to hear the story of how much we argued for 20 minutes about an explosion, feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you for reading my frustrations. So because OP requested it, and this is a shorter video, we're gonna go ahead and head down to the comments and check out a few of the more highly upvoted ones. But because this is a Den of the Drake video, all of the commentators are gonna have really bad accents. To be fair, the quicken spell only allows one spell and one cantrip, or 2 cantrips per action. However, a +5 weapon, which does not exist in the base rules at all, because it's overkill at its finest, should not be even owned by a level 20 PC with a few boons under its belt. And the mana is just crazy. Good on you for leaving. Just reading that, so many things. +7 weapons, clear favoritism. Yeah, I'd say you 100% made the good decision by leaving that campaign. But don't worry, it shouldn't be too hard for you to find a better DM after that mess. Okay, last comment, and then I'll go ahead and give you my thoughts. Well now, as a DM, this stuff baffles me. I had one player roll pretty bad one session, and it was obviously frustrated by the end, and it bothered me for weeks. Imagining just straight nerfing several plays and then taking a "if you don't like it then leave" mentality just blows my mind. That's right, Arthur. That sounds like something Dutch would do. John, boy, I told you this is my private time to browse Reddit. Now fuck off. So, it's obvious that this guy is not a huge fan of magic users, which I honestly don't have much of a problem with. I mean, low fantasy settings are a thing, and the DM could have easily just made it super apparent up front that he doesn't want magic in his games. But I don't think that's actually the case, as evidenced by him giving the barbarian demon butterfly powers. Overall, I find myself leaving this story confused and baffled by what exactly was going through this particular DM's head. If you have any suggestions as to what may have motivated this guy to act like he did, please leave a comment down below because I'm at a loss. Now, before we go, let's go ahead and take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake. This week's fan art comes from viewer George from Discord and depicts me clutching a helpless victim in my talons. Who is this guy? I don't know, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say he works for the IRS. Tell your federal government that cringe is not a form of taxable income.
But Mr. Drake,
I said what I said! Thank you again, George, for submitting your art. If you want to see your artwork displayed in Gallery of the Drake, go ahead and send it to the email in my About section. It means the world to me that I can create content that inspires artists like you to create artwork like this. Before I end the video, I would like to thank my friend Crow's Perch for helping me with the voice acting at the beginning of this video. I'll go ahead and leave a link to his channel down in the description. Be sure to check it out, he's criminally underrated and makes really good content. With the story over and the artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and end the video here. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.